I never planned to become invisible to my family. Standing in the corner of our annual Morrison family reunion, watching my relatives flaunt their American success stories, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. My brother Marcus, ever the golden child, was holding court near the champagne fountain, regaling everyone with tales of his latest corporate conquest. The merger should close next week, he announced, straightening his Armani tie. $40 million. The biggest deal Morrison Enterprises has ever seen. Our mother beamed with pride, touching his arm as if to make sure he was real. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Hyatt ballroom caught the light of my simple silver necklace, the only piece of jewelry I wore. My black dress, though well-made, wasn't designer. To them it was just another sign of my supposed failure. Lily. My mother's voice carried across the room with that familiar note of disappointment. Come here, darling. We were just discussing your situation. I took a slow sip of water, straightening my shoulders before walking over. At 32, I'd spent the last 7 years building something extraordinary in Tokyo, but to them I was just the daughter who'd run away from real responsibility. Still doing that teaching thing in Japan? Aunt Margaret asked, her voice dripping with false concern. He turned to my mother. Such a shame. She had such potential at Harvard. I didn't bother correcting her assumption. Let them think I was just an English teacher. The truth was far more satisfying, especially given what would happen tomorrow morning at the Morrison Enterprises board meeting. Actually, my brother Marcus cut in, Lily's wasting her Harvard MBA teaching businessmen how to say hello in English. He laughed and several relatives joined in. Meanwhile, I'm about to close the biggest deal of our family's history. The Tanaka Group is finally selling their tech division. I felt my phone buzz in my clutch. A message from Yuki, my chief operations officer. Everything is set for tomorrow, Sakura-sama. The documents are ready. The Tanaka Group? I asked innocently, watching Marcus preen. That's impressive. Not that you'd understand the complexities, he smirked. It's a delicate negotiation. Their CEO is flying in from Tokyo tomorrow to sign everything over. $40 million, and Morrison Enterprises will finally have its foothold in the Asian market. Our father joined the conversation, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. That's my boy. Building the empire just like I taught you. He glanced at me. At least one of my children understood the value of staying home and learning the family business. Oh, I learned plenty, I said softly, but no one was listening. They were too busy congratulating Marcus on his imminent triumph. My mother touched my arm, her fingers cold against my skin. Lily, honey, it's not too late, you know. You could come back, take a real position in the company. Marcus could probably find something suitable for you. Maybe in HR. I smiled, thinking of my office in Tokyo. The top floor of a gleaming tower in Shibuya, where I'd spent years building Sakura Industries into one of Japan's most powerful tech investment firms. The same firm that had secretly acquired the Tanaka Group 6 months ago. I'm quite happy with my choices, Mom. Happy? Marcus snorted. Teaching English to businessmen? Living in a tiny Tokyo apartment? That's not success, Lily. That's settling. If he only knew about my penthouse in Roppongi Hills. Or the fact that tomorrow morning he would discover exactly who owned the company he thought he was buying. Sometimes success looks different than you'd expect, I said, checking my phone again. Another message from Yuki. Their lawyers have no idea. Tomorrow will be interesting. Different. Marcus laughed. There's nothing different about failure, sis. But hey, at least you can say you tried something, right? Even if it didn't work out. I watched him raise his glass in a mock toast, our relatives chuckling along. 7 years of underestimation. 7 years of holiday phone calls where they talked over me, dismissed my life in Japan as some extended gap year that had gotten out of hand. Tomorrow, in exactly 14 hours, everything would change. Tomorrow, my brother would walk into that boardroom expecting to sign papers with some Japanese CEO he'd never met. Instead, he'd find himself face to face with the truth. I should go, I said, gathering my clutch. Early morning tomorrow. Oh right, Marcus called after me. Those English lessons won't teach themselves. More laughter followed me to the door. My driver was waiting outside with my car. Not the modest Honda I'd arrived in, but the sleek black Mercedes I usually used in Tokyo. As we pulled away from the hotel, I finally let myself smile. Let them laugh. Let them dismiss me one last time. Tomorrow they'd learn exactly what I'd built in Tokyo. Tomorrow they'd discover that the sister they'd written off as a failure now owned their precious $40 million deal. Tomorrow they'd finally understand that success doesn't always wear an Armani suit or brag at family reunions. Sometimes it speaks fluent Japanese and signs contracts that change everything. The next morning I stood in my hotel suite, adjusting my Chanel suit. Not that my family would recognize the designer. They'd never seen me wear anything but casual clothes. The wall-length mirror reflected someone they wouldn't recognize. A CEO, a power player, a woman who controlled billions in assets across Asia. My phone buzzed with updates from Yuki. Board members arriving now. Your brother looks nervous. I smiled, picturing Marcus pacing the conference room, probably adjusting his tie every few minutes. He'd spent months negotiating this deal, thinking he was dealing with some junior executives at the Tanaka Group. He had no idea every meeting, every proposal, every counteroffer had landed directly on my desk. The drive to Morrison Enterprises took exactly 12 minutes. I watched the familiar building approach 30 stories of glass and steel that my father had always been so proud of. Now it seemed almost quaint compared to our Tokyo headquarters. Ms. Morrison, the security guard greeted me with a puzzled look. I wasn't dressed like someone's English teacher anymore. I don't see you on the visitor list. Check again, I said calmly, handing him my business card. His eyes widened as he read the name. Lily Morrison, CEO, Sakura Industries. I'm so sorry, Ms. Morrison. Please go right up. The elevator ride to the 30th floor gave me time to center myself. 7 years of being underestimated, dismissed, and mocked were about to pay off. The doors opened to reveal my father's assistant, Emma, looking frantic. I'm sorry, this floor is closed for a private meeting. The Tanaka Group CEO is arriving any minute. I know, I smiled. That's why I'm here. Behind her, the boardroom doors were open. I could see my brother standing at the head of the table, shuffling papers nervously. My father sat in his usual chair, checking his watch every few seconds. The other board members murmured among themselves, all wondering why the CEO of Sakura Industries, the parent company of the Tanaka Group, had requested this meeting. I walked in silently, my heels clicking on the marble floor. It took them a moment to notice me. Lily, my father frowned. What are you doing here? We're about to have a very important meeting. I know, Dad. I set my briefcase on the table. That's exactly why I'm here. Marcus looked up from his papers, annoyance crossing his face. Look, sis, I know you're interested in business, but this isn't the time for you to play at being corporate. We're waiting for the CEO of Sakura Industries. Are you? I opened my briefcase, removing a thick folder embossed with the Sakura Industries logo. How interesting. The room fell silent as I walked to the head of the table, the spot Marcus had been standing in. He didn't move. Lily, my father's voice held a warning tone. This is not the time for games. Oh, I completely agree. I pulled out my phone, pressing a button. The large screen on the wall came to life, showing a live feed from our Tokyo office. Yuki and our entire executive team sat ready, watching. Good morning, Sakura-sama, Yuki said clearly. The board is assembled and ready for your decision regarding the Morrison acquisition. The room erupted in confused whispers. Marcus's face had gone pale. My father stood up so quickly his chair crashed backward. What is this? He demanded. I smiled, finally letting 7 years of hidden triumph show. This stat is business. Real business. I turned to the screen. Yuki, please display the ownership documents for the Tanaka Group. The screen filled with legal documents, prominently displaying Sakura Industries' complete ownership of the Tanaka Group, and my signature as CEO. That's impossible, Marcus stammered. We've been negotiating with Tanaka for months. No, I corrected him. You've been negotiating with my company. Did you really think a $40 million acquisition would be handled by junior executives? Every proposal you sent went straight to my desk. Your desk. My father's voice was barely a whisper. I reached into my briefcase again, pulling out a magazine, one of dozens that had featured me in the past few years. The cover showed me standing in our Tokyo office. Lily Morrison, the Harvard graduate revolutionizing Asian tech investment. While you all thought I was teaching English, I was building something. Something bigger than Morrison Enterprises could ever imagine. Sakura Industries doesn't want to sell you the Tanaka Group for $40 million. I paused, letting the words sink in. We're here to buy Morrison Enterprises. All of it. Marcus fell into a chair, his legs seeming to give out. That's not possible. We're a family company. Dad would never sell. Actually, I pulled out another document. He already has. Remember last month when the board approved that investment from the Nakamura Fund? That was us. We already own 20% of Morrison Enterprises. My father's face had turned ashen. The Nakamura Fund. That was you? Did you ever wonder why I chose Japan? I asked, looking around the room at the shocked faces of the board members. It wasn't because I was running away. It was because I saw an opportunity. While you were all focused on the American market, I was building relationships across Asia. While you dismissed me as a failure, I was closing billion-dollar deals. I walked to the window looking out at the city below. Sakura Industries now controls technology investments across 12 countries. We manage over $15 billion in assets. The Tanaka Group was just one small piece of our portfolio. $15 billion? Marcus choked out. That's right. I turned back to face them. That little English teacher you've been mocking? She runs one of the largest investment firms in Asia. And now she's about to own Morrison Enterprises. My father had sunk back into his chair, staring at the documents spread across the table. Years of doubting me, dismissing me, telling me I was wasting my potential, all of it crashed down around him in a single moment. The offer is fair, I continued, my voice professional. We'll maintain the Morrison name, keep most of the current employees. But management will change. Effective immediately. You can't do this, Marcus protested weakly. We're family. I smiled, remembering all the family reunions, all the snide comments, all the times they'd laughed at my failure. You're right, we are family. And families should support each other, shouldn't they? Instead you mocked me, dismissed me, told everyone I was wasting my life. I placed a final document on the table. Consider this my response. The board members were already reaching for the papers, recognizing the inevitable. My father hadn't moved, still staring at the magazine cover showing his supposedly failed daughter standing atop Tokyo's business world. The papers need to be signed today, I said, checking my watch. I have a flight back to Tokyo tonight. Unlike some people, I actually have a company to run. Marcus stood up suddenly, his face red with anger. This is revenge, isn't it? For all the times we didn't take you seriously. I shook my head. No, Marcus. This is business. Just business. I turned to the screen where Yuki and our team waited. Shall we proceed with the signatures? One by one the board members signed. My father's hand shook as he wrote his name, officially transferring control of his life's work to the daughter he'd underestimated. Marcus refused to sign until the lawyers explained he had no choice. The board had already approved the sale. As the last signature dried, I closed my briefcase and headed for the door. I'll have the transition team here next week. Until then, try not to worry too much. After all. I paused, looking back at my stunned family. It's just business. That evening, as my private jet took off for Tokyo, I received a message from my mother. We never knew. We never understood. I typed back a simple response. No, you never did. Success, I've learned, doesn't always look the way people expect. Sometimes it speaks Japanese, builds empires in silence, and waits for exactly the right moment to reveal its true face. Sometimes it takes 7 years of being underestimated to deliver a single moment of absolute clarity. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't in the revenge. It's in the simple act of proving that success doesn't always wear an Armani suit or brag at family reunions. Sometimes it builds something extraordinary far from home, while everyone else is too busy laughing to notice. The city lights of Tokyo welcomed me home that night, glittering like stars against the dark sky. Tomorrow I would walk into my office, my real office, and continue building my empire. Let them think what they want about their little English teacher. I know exactly who I am. And now, finally, so do they. 6 months later, I walked into another family gathering, this time at my Tokyo penthouse. The same relatives who once mocked my failed career now sat awkwardly on my Italian leather sofas, surrounded by evidence of my success. Marcus had adapted surprisingly well to his new role, no longer CEO, but head of American operations under my leadership. He'd finally learned to respect not just my position but my vision. My father still struggled with the change, but even he couldn't deny the numbers. Morrison Enterprises had tripled in value since the acquisition. "I got it wrong," he said quietly, joining me on the balcony overlooking the Tokyo skyline. "All those years I thought success only looked one way." I sipped my sake, remembering all the times he'd dismissed my choices. "Success isn't about looking powerful, Dad. It's about being powerful. And smart enough to let others underestimate you until the right moment." My mother tried harder than anyone to make amends, though her attempts were sometimes awkward. "I've been learning Japanese," she announced proudly, though her pronunciation needed work. At least she was trying. The family dynamics had shifted permanently. No more mockery about my life choices, no more dismissive comments about teaching English. Now they spoke of me with a mixture of respect and caution, never quite sure what other surprises I might have hidden away. Did I forgive them? Perhaps. But I would never forget. The same determination that drove me to build Sakura Industries now drove me to expand it even further. The little girl they once underestimated now controlled an empire spanning multiple continents. As my guests left that evening, I caught my reflection in the window, still the same person, but now they finally saw me clearly. Success isn't always about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply showing the world exactly who you've become while they were too busy laughing to notice.
I never thought I'd set foot in the Harrison building again. Yet here I stood, staring up at the gleaming 60-story tower that housed Harrison Global Industries, the company that had been my family's legacy for 3 generations, the company that had thrown me away like yesterday's trash. My name is Sophia Harrison, and 10 years ago, my own family kicked me out of the business I was born to inherit. The memories rushed back as I pushed through the revolving glass doors. I remembered running through these marble halls as a child, pretending I was already the CEO. Back then, my father would laugh, scoop me up in his arms, and tell me that one day, this would all be mine. What a lie that turned out to be. The security guard at the desk did a double take when he saw my ID. "Ms. Harrison? I haven't seen you in 10 years, I finished for him, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "I have a meeting with the board." He quickly buzzed me through, and I stepped into the private elevator that would take me to the top floor. As I watched the numbers climb, I thought about the last time I'd made this journey. I was 25 then, fresh out of my MBA, full of ideas about modernizing the company and taking it into the digital age. My father had just stepped down as CEO, and everyone assumed I would take his place. I was the eldest child after all, the one who'd studied business while my younger brother Oliver partied his way through college. The board meeting that day started like any other. I prepared a detailed presentation about my vision for the company's future, expanding into emerging markets, investing in sustainable technology, streamlining our supply chains. But I never got to show it. Instead, my father stood up and made an announcement that shattered my world. After careful consideration, he said, not even looking at me, "The board has decided that Oliver will be taking over as CEO." The room spun. Oliver? My brother, who could barely handle his own checking account, who had never shown any interest in the business beyond using it to fund his lavish lifestyle. "This can't be right," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm the one who's been preparing for this my whole life. I have plans, strategies." "Plans?" Oliver smirked from across the table. "You mean those ridiculous ideas about changing everything? This company doesn't need change, Sophia. It needs steady leadership." "Oliver understands tradition," my father added. "He'll maintain the Harrison way of doing things." I looked around the table at the board members, people I'd known my entire life. Most avoided my eyes. A few nodded in agreement with my father. Only Uncle Marcus, my father's younger brother, showed any sign of disagreement, but even he remained silent. "The Harrison way?" I stood up, anger replacing shock. "You mean the way that's losing us market share every year? The way that's making us irrelevant while our competitors innovate?" "That's enough." My father's fist hit the table. "This decision is final. Oliver will be CEO. You can either accept a position under his leadership or what?" I challenged. "Or you can leave." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I looked at Oliver, seeing the triumph in his eyes. He'd always been jealous of my relationship with the company, of how naturally business came to me while he struggled. Now he finally won. Fine, I said quietly, gathering my papers. I quit. Sophia, don't be dramatic, my father sighed. Just because you're not CEO doesn't mean. No, you don't understand. I cut him off. I quit everything. The company, the family, all of it. I'm done. I walked out of that boardroom with my head held high, ignoring the whispers behind me. By the time I reached the lobby, security was already waiting with a box of my personal belongings. They'd planned this. They'd known I wouldn't accept their decision. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at old family photos, trying to understand how it had all gone so wrong. My phone buzzed constantly with messages, most from my mother, begging me to reconsider, a few from Uncle Marcus expressing his sympathy. I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on the small leather-bound notebook in my hands. It had belonged to my grandfather, the man who built Harrison Global from the ground up. He'd given it to me on his deathbed, making me promise not to open it until I really needed it. There are secrets in here, Sophia, he'd whispered. Things about the company, about our family. Use them wisely. I kept that promise, carrying the notebook with me but never opening it. Now, with nothing left to lose, I broke the small brass lock and began to read. What I found inside changed everything. The notebook contained detailed records of my grandfather's early business dealings, including several that had never appeared in any official company documents. There were names, dates, account numbers, and most importantly, details about a series of offshore holdings that no one else knew existed. My grandfather, it seemed, had set up a complex network of shell companies decades ago, companies that technically owned significant portions of Harrison Global's most valuable assets, companies that, according to the documentation in the notebook, he had quietly transferred to my name on my 18th birthday. I stayed up all night, poring over the contents. By morning, I had a plan. The next day, I withdrew every penny from my trust fund and booked a one-way ticket to Singapore. If my family wanted to push me out, fine. I would build something of my own, something so successful that they would regret ever doubting me. I spent the next decade doing exactly that. While Oliver ran Harrison Global the traditional way, which mostly meant maintaining the status quo and taking long lunches with old clients, I was building an empire in Asia. I started small, using my grandfather's connections to get meetings with investors. Within 2 years, I had founded Aurora Ventures, a technology investment firm that specialized in exactly the kind of innovation Harrison Global had rejected. I worked 18-hour days, lived on coffee and determination, and poured every ounce of energy into proving them wrong. While my brother appeared in society pages at charity galas, I was in startup offices and factory floors, identifying the next big technological breakthroughs. Year by year, Aurora Ventures grew. We funded revolutionary AI companies, backed sustainable energy projects, and invested in cutting-edge medical technology. Every success felt like a personal victory, a vindication of everything I tried to tell the board that day. I never looked back, never attended family events, never responded to the increasingly desperate messages from my mother about reconciliation. The only person I stayed in touch with was Uncle Marcus, who occasionally sent me updates about the company. And oh, what updates they were. Under Oliver's leadership, Harrison Global stagnated. They lost major contracts to more innovative competitors. Their stock price dropped steadily. Old clients began jumping ship to younger, more dynamic companies, many of which were backed by Aurora Ventures, though Oliver never made the connection. He was too busy enjoying his CEO title to notice that his sister was systematically dismantling his empire from halfway across the world. Then came the message I'd been waiting 10 years to receive. It was a Tuesday evening in Singapore. I was in my office, reviewing potential investments, when an urgent email arrived from Uncle Marcus. Sophia, they're finally realizing how badly they need you. Harrison Global is about to lose everything. Oliver's mismanagement has brought us to the brink of bankruptcy. The board is desperate to close a deal with Maxwell Corp, a $50 million investment that could save the company. But here's the thing they don't know yet. According to your grandfather's arrangements, that deal can't go through without your signature. You own controlling interest in the subsidiaries they're trying to sell. The board meeting is next week. They're going to find out soon. Thought you'd want to know. Uncle Marcus. I leaned back in my chair, a smile spreading across my face. 10 years of waiting, building, preparing for this moment. Finally, it was time to go home. I made a few calls, booked a first-class ticket to New York, and began reviewing the documents my grandfather had left me. Everything was exactly as he predicted. Harrison Global couldn't make any major asset sales without approval from the shell companies he'd set up. Companies that I legally controlled. My brother was about to learn a very expensive lesson about the true meaning of family business. The Harrison Global boardroom hadn't changed in 10 years. Same mahogany table, same leather chairs, same oil painting of my grandfather overlooking it all. But the people around the table looked considerably more worried than the last time I'd seen them. I watched through the glass walls as they filed in for the emergency board meeting. Oliver, now sporting gray at his temples, shifting papers nervously. My father, looking older and more tired than I remembered. The board members, their faces etched with concern. None of them knew I was waiting in the adjoining office with Uncle Marcus. "They're about to present the Maxwell Corp deal," Marcus whispered. "Should I tell them you're here?" I shook my head, watching as Maxwell Corp's CEO, James Maxwell, entered the room with his legal team. "Let them get through the presentation first. I want to see their faces when they realize." Oliver stood at the head of the table, trying to project confidence he clearly didn't feel. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on such short notice. As you know, Harrison Global has faced some challenges recently." I almost laughed at the understatement. Under Oliver's leadership, the company had lost 60% of its market value. Their stock was at an all-time low, their major clients were jumping ship, and their once sterling reputation was in tatters. "But today," Oliver continued, "we have an opportunity to turn everything around. Mr. Maxwell has graciously offered to invest $50 million in exchange for our Asian manufacturing subsidiaries and technology patents." James Maxwell nodded graciously. "We believe these assets align perfectly with our expansion plans." My father cleared his throat. "The board has reviewed the terms, and we recommend moving forward immediately. If everyone's in agreement, we can sign today." That was my cue. I pushed open the boardroom door, my heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. "I'm afraid that won't be possible." The reaction was immediate. Oliver's face went white. My father half rose from his chair, then sank back down. Board members exchanged panicked glances. "Sophia," Oliver's voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, placing my briefcase on the table. "Protecting my interests. Did you really think you could sell those subsidiaries without my approval?" James Maxwell looked between us, confusion evident. "I'm sorry, who is this?" "Sophia Harrison," I said, extending my hand. "The actual owner of the assets you're trying to buy." "That's ridiculous," Oliver sputtered. "I'm the CEO. Those subsidiaries belong to Harrison Global." I pulled a stack of documents from my briefcase. Actually, they belong to Pacific Crown Holdings, Summit Enterprises, and Aurora Development Corporation. 3 companies that grandfather set up 30 years ago. Companies that I've legally controlled since I turned 18. The blood draining from my father's face as he recognized the names. Those were James' private holdings. He told me he'd dissolved them decades ago. He lied, I said simply. He knew exactly what would happen to the company if Oliver took over, so he made sure I had the power to protect his legacy when the time came. I distributed copies of the ownership documents. The board members pored over them, their expressions shifting from disbelief to shock as they realized the truth. This can't be legal," Oliver stammered. "I assure you it is," I replied. "My lawyers have verified everything. You need my signature to sell those assets, and I'm not signing." James Maxwell leaned forward, suddenly more interested. "Ms. Harrison, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No need," I cut him off. "I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to make an announcement." I turned to address the board. Harrison Global is failing because it refused to change. While Oliver was maintaining tradition, the world moved on. But I've spent the last decade building something better. I pulled up Aurora Ventures' financial reports on the boardroom screen. My company now manages over $10 billion in technology investments. We're pioneering the innovations that Harrison Global rejected, the same innovations your clients are now demanding. The board members stared at the numbers in stunned silence. Even Oliver seemed temporarily speechless. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued. "Aurora Ventures will buy controlling interest in Harrison Global. We'll modernize its operations, expand its technology division, and restore its reputation. The company will survive. but under my leadership, not Oliver's. You can't do this, my father finally found his voice. The board would never. The board doesn't have a choice, I interrupted. Check your stock prices. While you've been in this meeting, Aurora Ventures has been buying shares on the open market. We already own 30%. Combined with my ownership of the subsidiaries, I have effective control. Oliver collapsed into his chair, the reality of the situation finally hitting him. You've been planning this all along. No, brother dear, you did this to yourself. I just waited for the right moment to step in and clean up your mess. I turned to James Maxwell. I apologize for wasting your time, Mr. Maxwell, but Harrison Global is no longer for sale. As Maxwell and his team gathered their things to leave, I surveyed the shocked faces around the table. These people had thrown me out, thinking they'd never need me again. Now their futures rested in my hands. The official announcement goes out tomorrow, I said. Oliver, you'll announce your resignation, citing personal reasons. Father, you'll retire from the board. The rest of you can either adapt to the new Harrison Global or tender your resignations. And if we refuse? Oliver challenged, but his voice lacked conviction. I smiled. Then I'll sell my subsidiaries to your competitors, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of this company but an empty building and some letterhead. Your choice. One by one, they nodded. Even my father, though it clearly pained him, gave a slight nod of acceptance. As they filed out of the boardroom, Uncle Marcus caught my eye and smiled. He'd been the only one who'd believed in me, who'd understood why I had to leave and build something of my own. I walked to the window, looking out over the city. The same view I'd dreamed about as a child, now finally mine, not because of birthright or tradition, but because I'd earned it. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant in Singapore. Stock price already up 25% on takeover rumors. Investors excited about the merger. I smiled, remembering all those nights I'd worked while Oliver attended parties, all the deals I'd closed while he played golf with old clients. Every sacrifice, every lonely moment, every setback had led to this. The last person to leave the boardroom was my father. He paused at the door, looking older and smaller than I remembered. Your grandfather, he said quietly, he always said you were the one. I should have listened. Yes, I replied, not turning from the window. You should have. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I was alone in the boardroom where 10 years ago, they tried to end my career. Now I stood here as the owner of $2 billion companies, proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success they can't ignore. I picked up my grandfather's notebook from my briefcase, running my fingers over its worn leather cover. Thank you, I whispered to his portrait on the wall. He'd given me the tools I needed, but I built something he never could have imagined. Tomorrow, the business world would be buzzing about the merger, about how Sophia Harrison, the exiled daughter, had orchestrated the biggest corporate takeover of the year, about how the sister they dismissed as worthless had become the savior they desperately needed. But tonight, I simply sat in my grandfather's chair, savoring the silence of victory. Sometimes revenge takes patience, planning, and a decade of quiet work. But when it finally arrives, it's worth every minute of waiting. I opened my laptop and began drafting the press release that would shake the business world. Harrison Global announces merger with Aurora Ventures. Sophia Harrison returns as CEO. The headline would shock the business world, but not as much as what would follow. Under my leadership, Harrison Global would become everything I'd envisioned 10 years ago: innovative, dynamic, and firmly focused on the future. Oliver had wanted to maintain tradition. Instead, he triggered a revolution. And I was just getting started. My hands trembled as I signed away my dream for $1. My brother Michael stood behind our parents, barely containing his smirk as I scrawled my signature on each page of the transfer documents. 5 years of work, gone in 5 minutes of legal finality. See, Daniel? That wasn't so hard, my father said, gathering the papers with practiced efficiency. After all, as one of Boston's top corporate lawyers, he'd overseen countless company acquisitions, though usually they involved more than a single dollar. My mother touched my shoulder, her expensive rings cold against my skin. It's for the best, honey. Michael has the business experience to make something of this. You can go back to school, get your MBA like we always planned. I stared at the ThinkTech logo on the last page, my logo, the one I designed in my MIT dorm room while first imagining a company that would revolutionize artificial intelligence. Now it belonged to my older brother, who'd never written a line of code in his life. "The company car keys," Michael prompted, holding out his hand. "And the office access card." I pulled them from my pocket, along with my key card to the research lab, where I'd spent countless nights perfecting our AI algorithms. What Michael and my parents didn't know was that the most valuable part of ThinkTech wasn't in any of those places. The real treasure was safely encrypted on servers they didn't even know existed. This whole nightmare had started 3 months ago, when our family's golden child had finally noticed what his embarrassment of a younger brother was building. Michael, with his Harvard MBA and junior partnership at Goldman Sachs, had always been the family success story. I was the dreamer who'd drop out of MIT's computer science program to pursue a ridiculous tech fantasy. But then Microsoft had approached ThinkTech about our natural language processing engine. Google's ad division had expressed interest in our machine learning patents. Suddenly, my fantasy looked like it might be worth something. That's when Michael had started showing up at family dinners again, asking casual questions about ThinkTech's technology. Just brotherly interest, he claimed. I should have known better. 2 weeks ago, he presented my parents with a detailed analysis of ThinkTech's potential and my supposed inability to realize it. "Daniel's a brilliant programmer," he told them, "but he doesn't understand business. At this rate, he'll run the company into the ground before its technology reaches its true market potential." My parents, who'd been increasingly vocal about their disappointment in my wasteful career choices, had seized on his proposal. They would cut off my trust fund, withdraw the family's seed investment in ThinkTech, and call in all the business connections they'd reluctantly provided, unless I sold the company to Michael. "He'll know how to structure the proper deals," my father had insisted. "Turn it into a real company instead of a programmer's hobby shop." What they didn't understand was that ThinkTech had already evolved far beyond their comprehension. Our core AI technology, the part I kept carefully hidden from all company documentation, wasn't just valuable. It was revolutionary. I discovered the breakthrough accidentally during a late-night coding session 6 months ago. A small error in my algorithms had produced something unexpected. An AI system that could not only process natural language but actually understand context and subtext in ways no existing technology could match. When I realized what I created, I made a decision that now proved prophetic. I separated the breakthrough into 3 distinct patent applications filed under my own name rather than ThinkTech's. As far as the company records showed, we were still working on basic machine learning tools. The real innovation, the one that would change everything, was mine alone. "I'll need you to brief me on all current projects," Michael said as we walked to the ThinkTech offices for the final handover. "Client lists, research status, everything." I nodded, keeping my face carefully neutral. "Of course. Though most of it is in the company documentation I already provided." He frowned slightly. My brother had always been able to tell when I was holding something back, ever since we were kids. But now he had no power to force the truth from me. He owned ThinkTech, yes, but only the shell I'd left for him to find. The next 2 weeks were a parade of humiliation as Michael took control of my company. He brought in his own management team, replaced my beloved whiteboard walls with modern art, and relegated me to an advisory role that meant nothing. I watched him parade potential investors through the office, spouting buzzwords he didn't understand about technology he couldn't comprehend. Each time, I thought about the encrypted files on my private servers, about the 3 patent applications slowly working their way through the approval process. My parents were delighted with the transition. Michael's already lined up meetings with major tech companies. My mother gushed during our Sunday dinner. "He says Google might be interested in an acquisition." I pushed my food around my plate. "Google, really? What do they think of the core technology?" Michael's fork paused halfway to his mouth. The engineers were very impressed with the natural language processing capabilities. I bet they were, since that's all he had to show them. The real breakthrough, the contextual understanding engine that would make their best AI look like a pocket calculator, was safely hidden away. "I'm thinking of going traveling for a while," I announced. "Clear my head." "Running away?" Michael taunted. "Can't handle watching someone else succeed with your little project." Our mother jumped in quickly. "That's a wonderful idea, Daniel. Take some time, figure out your next steps, maybe look into some MBA programs." I nodded agreeably, let them think I was retreating, licking my wounds. In reality, I had plans. Careful, deliberate plans that were already in motion. That night, in my apartment, I reviewed the latest communication from the patent office. All 3 applications were proceeding smoothly. Initial feedback was positive. Within months, I would own the official patents to technology that would revolutionize artificial intelligence. And Michael, with all his Harvard business acumen, had no idea what he'd failed to acquire with his dollar purchase. I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Singapore. Not to run away, but to meet with investors I've been quietly cultivating, ones who understood the true potential of my hidden innovation. Ones who would help me build something new, something that would make ThinkTech look like a practice run. My phone buzzed. Another text from Michael. Need you to explain some of the technical documentation tomorrow. The Google team has questions. I smiled, remembering all the times he'd lorded his business success over me, all the times he'd dismissed my work as a waste of potential. Sorry, I typed back. Flight's early tomorrow. Have to finish packing. Let him figure it out for himself. Let him slowly discover that the company he'd strong-armed away from me was just a facade, a shell containing only the most basic version of what I created. The real power, the true innovation, was traveling with me to Singapore, encrypted on a drive that never left my possession. And in a few months, when the patents were approved, when the true scope of my breakthrough became public, my family would learn a harsh lesson about underestimating the quiet sun. Sometimes, losing everything is just the beginning of winning it all back, with interest. Singapore's heat hit me like a wall as I stepped out of my hotel 6 months later. The city had become my second home, my sanctuary away from Boston's suffocating family dynamics. My phone buzzed. Another message from Michael. Daniel, the Google team is getting frustrated. These algorithms aren't performing as expected. Call me. I smiled, remembering the careful layers of code I'd built into ThinkTech's systems. The basic AI worked perfectly, exactly as advertised. But without the breakthrough innovation I hidden away, it would never achieve the potential Michael had bragged about to investors. My new company, Nova Intelligence, was taking shape in a sleek office overlooking Marina Bay. My Singapore-based team consisted of brilliant programmers who understood the revolutionary nature of what we were building. No family connections, no inherited positions, just pure talent and shared vision. Then came the email I'd been waiting for. The U.S. Patent Office had approved all 3 of my personal patent applications. The confirmation arrived during a video call with Michael, who was becoming increasingly desperate as major tech companies began pulling back from ThinkTech. Something's missing, he admitted, running his hands through his now disheveled hair. The core technology isn't doing what the early tests showed it could do. Did you change something before you left? I kept my expression neutral. Everything's exactly as it was documented in the company files, Michael. Maybe you should have your Harvard MBA team look deeper into the technical specifications. After ending the call, I opened the patent confirmations. There it was in official language. I personally owned the rights to the contextual understanding engine that made my AI truly revolutionary. ThinkTech, now Michael's company, owned nothing but basic machine learning algorithms available from a dozen other sources. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. The patent approvals had been published, and the tech world was on fire. Revolutionary AI breakthrough patents approved. TechCrunch. Nova Intelligence CEO Daniel Chen holds key to next-gen AI. Wall Street Journal. ThinkTech sale under scrutiny as former founder's patents surface. Bloomberg. I was in a meeting with Japanese investors when my father called. Then my mother. Then Michael, repeatedly. I let them all go to voicemail. Finally, I answered a call from Jessica Wong, the technology reporter who'd broken the story. Mr. Chen, your brother claims these innovations were developed at ThinkTech and should have been included in the company's sale. Care to comment? The patents were filed in my personal name before any discussion of selling ThinkTech. I replied calmly. The documentation is clear and complete. The technology covered by these patents was never ThinkTech company property. And the fact that your brother paid only $1 for ThinkTech? I allowed myself a small smile. The price reflected the actual value of the technology included in the sale. The story exploded across the business world. Michael appeared on CNBC trying to claim the patents belonged to ThinkTech. But his arguments fell apart under scrutiny. Every document, every filing, Every line of code had been carefully prepared to withstand exactly this challenge. My parents were next, calling a family meeting at their Beacon Hill mansion. I attended via video call from my Singapore office, now deliberately decorated with Nova Intelligence's sleek logo visible in the background. "This is about family loyalty," my father began, his lawyer's composure cracking. "You deliberately deceived your brother." "No," I interrupted quietly. "This is about business. Isn't that what you always taught us?" Michael wanted my company, so he leveraged family connections to take it. Fine, he got exactly what he paid for, $1 worth of technology. My mother tried next. "Darling, we can work this out. The family name is doing just fine," I finished. "Nova Intelligence is already valued at $2.3 billion after our last funding round. The Chen family has nothing to worry about." Michael finally exploded. "You little snake. You knew what you were hiding when you signed those transfer papers. I'll sue you for fraud." I held up a document. My legal team prepared a complete analysis. The sale documents, which your Harvard lawyers drafted, specifically covered only technology owned by ThinkTech at the time of sale. These patents were personal intellectual property filed before any discussion of selling the company. Sue if you want, but it will only generate more embarrassing headlines. The silence that followed was deafening. My father, the brilliant corporate lawyer, knew I was right. Michael, for all his MBA polish, had been outmaneuvered by the brother he'd underestimated. "What do you want?" my father finally asked. "Nothing," I replied. "Nova Intelligence is already partnering with Microsoft, Google, and 3 major AI research institutes. We're opening offices in Tokyo and London next month. I don't mean anything from ThinkTech or the family." "Those were my connections," Michael sputtered. "My business relationships." "No," I cut in. "Those were the connections you inherited. I built these relationships myself, with companies that understand the true value of innovation." Over the next year, the contrast between Nova Intelligence and ThinkTech became impossible to ignore. Without its hidden core technology, ThinkTech struggled to compete. Michael's Harvard connections couldn't change the fact that he owned a hollow shell of what he thought he'd acquired. Nova Intelligence, meanwhile, soared. Our contextual understanding engine revolutionized everything from medical diagnosis to financial analysis. The patents that Michael had failed to capture became the foundation of a new generation of AI technology. My parents tried different approaches to regain control. First came guilt, family dinners filled with references to tradition and loyalty. Then negotiation, offers to merge ThinkTech and Nova Intelligence under family oversight. Finally, acceptance, grudging recognition that their younger son had outmaneuvered them all. The final act came during a tech conference in San Francisco. I was delivering the keynote address when I spotted my family in the audience. Michael looked tired. The polish of his Goldman Sachs days faded. My parents sat stiffly, watching as I demonstrated Nova Intelligence's latest innovation. After the presentation, Michael approached me alone. "You could have just told me what you were really building," he said quietly. I looked at my brother, remembering all the times he'd dismissed my work, all the family dinners where he boasted while belittling my choices. "Would you have listened? Or would you have just tried to take it sooner?" He had no answer. A week later, ThinkTech announced it was being sold to a minor tech company for a fraction of what Michael had once boasted it was worth. The headlines were brutal. ThinkTech's sale marks end of family tech dynasty that never was. My mother called, tears in her voice. Was it worth it? Breaking up the family like this? I looked out my office window at Singapore's glittering skyline. The family broke things first, Mom. I just refused to be broken with it. Nova Intelligence continued to grow. We opened research centers worldwide, advanced AI technology in ways my former family company never could have, and built something far beyond what Michael had tried to steal for $1. Last month, I received an invitation to speak at MIT's graduation ceremony. The topic, Innovation, Family, and the True Cost of Success. I accepted, but not to gloat or seek revenge. I accepted to share the real lesson I'd learned. Sometimes, losing everything is the first step to gaining something greater. Sometimes, the quietest member of the family is the one you should have watched most carefully. And sometimes, $1's worth of humiliation buys you a future worth billions. The patents that Michael failed to capture now hang framed in my office. A reminder that true innovation can't be stolen, only earned. Next to them sits a single dollar bill, preserved in a case. Underneath, a small plaque reads, "Price of freedom, $1. Value of believing in yourself, priceless." Michael still runs a small consulting firm in Boston. My parents still attend their social functions and talk about family loyalty. But in boardrooms and tech conferences around the world, people tell a different story. About the quiet programmer who turned a forced sale into a billion-dollar victory. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success they can't take credit for.